Let me call to order the special audit committee meeting of today, May 12th. Yeah, can we have a roll call?
Sorry, Council Member Mohan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore. Here. Han Wu is absent and Chair Schmidt.
Here. Great, we've got a quorum. Let's get started. We've got a special item on our special agenda here, so I don't see anybody from the public, and so we're gonna jump right to item one of the new business, which is information item to receive the treasurer's investment report for the quarter ending March 31st, 2025. Jonathan, you want to kick it off and then we'll proceed.
I'll start us off with the investment report, and hopefully between here and the next few minutes, Carlos, our at Chandler will be able to jump. So before you is the third quarter, March 31st, 2025 investment report.
Oh, yes, sorry, one.
And here's our cash balances for various balances. As you can see, our Wells Fargo balance has increased approximately $4 million. This is a net difference between cash received of additional $4 million. What is key to note here is we did spend or remit about $12 million to BAS as part of our tax sharing agreement. This was offset by a larger increase in revenues relating to sales tax and property taxes and VTC or our vehicle like VLC property taxes. Workers' comp nominally decreased, and this is just adjusted each month based off of the need. Our cash equivalents for LAIF or local agency investment fund increased by about 800,000, and this is just strictly interest earnings that LAIF earned in Q4 fiscal year, calendar year 2024. And then investments, as you can see, it's increased by $1.3 million, and this is also just strictly due to interest earnings with Chandler. Far as a decrease in that is largely based off of their earnings. So, do you have any questions? Or
Thank you. Do we have a limit for how much can be in LAIF?
LAIF is capped at 75.
5, okay.
So if we were to, I have yet to hear whether if we were to take that to the max, let's say it, because their interest is allocated the following of each quarter. So it would be January, April, July. What happens if we're at 75 million and interest is earned? Does that mean they automatically remit those funds to the city and maintain that 75 million cap? I am unsure. I can get that information back to you should you want to pursue that.
Okay, and there's a second part of the question, because I noticed in the Chandler report, they had a purchase of local agency investment fund state pool in there. It wasn't much. I mean, considering we have 75 million, it was 773,000. So maybe when we get to the Chandler report, we can look at that, because I it's like the first I've seen it, and I knew there was some limit as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would play if the city has a direct investment versus using a third party like Chandler that would also invest
Yes.
funds, because it's held in a custodial account, right? So I'm not sure how that would. You're saying that they invested into LAIF? Because I didn't see that.
Like acquisitions purchase, March 31st, 2025.
Is that possibly a consolidated element of where?
That may be the what we're seeing here.
Because
So
it's your 800,000, it's your, yeah,
so
it's gotta be.
yeah. So what they're trying to do, and this is what we're moving towards, is having Chandler capture all of our cash accounts, which includes Wells Fargo and Lave. So you would be able to go into one report and see everything that's going on with the city. And this is part of that adjustment that I want us to make. And we'll see a complete view of that in our next meeting in July.
Okay,
So it'll have our beginning balances and our ending balances for both March 31st, 2025 and July 30th, 2025.
okay, so to that point, this needs to kind of highlight who's the custodian of what in this list so that I don't, or other people don't make the same.
There's some formatting that we did recognize that we would want to adjust. And so, yeah, that'll just take some adjustments.
Okay, well, I'll be a good guinea pig for that.
Why don't you continue, Jonathan? Unless you're finished, we can go through the staff report while we're waiting for Carlos. I've got some questions. The rest of us may have some more.
Yeah, if you have some questions, we can go ahead and address the staff report. There were some changes, as you know, to the staff report to condense it and to make it more streamlined and to get straight to the point. So if there was additional information, well, there were additional information that were one, either not static because we hadn't had the opportunity to close our books. And there's some cash flow items that were redundant because they were also located in Chandler's report. So we went ahead and stripped that out of the report just to make it a little more user friendly and kind of so that someone coming in and has not been familiar with the report would look at a 12, 13 page document and not know what to kind of focus in on. So by limiting it to the 6 pages or so, it kind of highlight the more important information. We are still looking to kind of weed out some of the information that we may not need, but I am open to any suggestions if you want me to keep anything specifically or something that you would want to maybe remove.
Why don't we,
I have an ask and is but I don't know that it's particularly relevant. You talk about the RFP on page 4. 2018-19, the city conducted a RFP for management services, selected Chandler. We did approve what was interested in. It was what amendment we're on. So we approved the third amendment that was agreement 18-245 in May 21st, 2024, and it expired 2028 with a 1-year extension. And then there's a part of that where it's kind of like a Greg Card question. Are we still within like our purchasing policy? How much money that they've gotten, or, when are we gonna need to go out for another RFP in the future?
Add that in. I've had discussions on this with Greg, and these are one of those interesting cutouts that a lot of agencies aren't I'm not saying they don't follow procurement policy, but it's a bit nuanced. Very similar to legal costs, right? So that's not something that typically follows a very strict procurement policy. And so I can go ahead and we'll be sure to add something in next time to see what kind of how it follow our purchasing policy and so that it's a little more clear apart from the amendment number and what the current terms of the agreement is with challenge. Just
The audit committee, I don't think we do, but does the audit committee go over the purchasing policy ever?
no, that's not part of from my understanding, it's not part of the roles and responsibilities as stated in the municipal code.
Because I was hitting the same kind of a question with regards to some of our Parks and Rec contracts that can get well over the 200 and something thousand. As time goes on and they use the same, like Math Olympiads person or ceramics person, and then many years pass. So, okay.
in terms of audit committee, just as a comment, that's one of the beauty parts of having the internal audit team. We can, if we can remember these various things, we can add it into their work plan, because I think they've looked at purchasing it for some departments. They haven't necessarily looked at that particular, but maybe they looked at the limit for the department that they looked at. But we could add that into what we want them to look at in some future work plan, and then we would be addressing it as an audit committee. I think that would be one way, for example.
Just to add to that, I recall the amendment that we did, that you did last year. And we had some in-depth discussion about, should we go out and do an RFP, or should we continue with
our auditors?
Yeah,
With China.
with,
Yeah,
I think
as you may recall, Vice Mayor, we did go to council on this, and to be frank, I don't remember the exact where we landed. I think we extended it a couple of years, and we did put in a not to exceed amount. So kind of highlighting there is a cost associated with having Chandler as part of our asset manager.
Right, right. I remember seeing the percentages. Yeah, so it was a 600,000 not to exceed 2028 with a 1-year extension. Yeah, I pulled it up to look at it. But anyway, if we had a mention, because when this comes back again, if the staff report can have that agreement number, and then I can go through these steps again faster. I'm sort of
Certainly.
helping myself out.
And if we can either continue this Q&A, or we do have Carlos online now.
Well, let's continue the Q&A, and then maybe we'll get Carlos. I've got one. Do you have one on
I
the,
have one.
why don't you go?
Okay, no, my question was about the section 115 trusts, and there's a reasonable explanation, but I still wanted to hear it from you. The investment return was sort of a negative 0.44 and 0.43 for the two different, and just wondered what the rationale for that.
So there, as you can see, it's a bit different than what Chandler's showing here, because they do follow different investment guidelines and rules. So they, as you may remember, PARs can invest in equities, and so the values for those equities, there could be losses, right? However, there's also a huge positive upswing if the market's doing well. So for that reason, you saw that negative balance at June 30th or March 31st for PARs. And I think they touched on it last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we had a robust discussion, and I hope they're gonna, PFM or US Bank will come back with some variance analysis as to what accounted for, because the index was not down by that much, the benchmark that we're using. So that was a big question that we spent some time on, and I hope they'll come back with something.
Yeah, we've been in discussions trying to get to be able to provide that supplemental report or incorporate it in the current report, so that we have a more I wouldn't say user friendly, but a more comprehensive report to kind of guide us through how are they doing benchmark, because currently they are not following the benchmark to a T. Is just essentially an indicator how our particular markets doing, or a particular set of investments are doing. And that's what we strive for. So if you would like to move towards mirroring that benchmark, they can certainly do that. Or if we're going to deviate from that benchmark, depending on what your investors are saying, the strategists, why are we doing that, and what is this upswing, or what is the downswing in making those investments? And that's what that supplemental report or additional page kind of bridging the two what that's the purpose of that additional page.
I think it's a great point, though. We can accept deviation, but when it's a negative deviation, then it's less acceptable, right? So we're going to spend a lot of time, that we might want to budget even more time for US Bank when they're going to, we'll find out what the markets do, of course, June 30th in our July meeting, but looking forward to another robust discussion. I'd like to kick off, and maybe Carlos is on board now, but there's compliance section at the very end of the staff report. And over the years, it's been a topic of discussion. So let's, my question for it is, for example, the sentence that I'm particularly interested in is that in compliance with California Government Code 53646B3, the city maintains the ability to meet its expenditure requirements for the next 6 months. So that's a very nice statement of the compliance. And in prior treasurer's reports, we would have a series of graphs. Before that, we would have a series of tables. We've had all kinds of goals of bridging that state. The facts of the cash balances, for example, that you just gave us. So I took a quick look at AI and intelligence can help us. So our 4 neighboring cities do it somewhat differently. And I sent to city staff what my research uncovered for what it's worth. But the bold statement here, I think even if we go back to the ancient history of the graphs that we had in the previous report, it would include revenues, for example, that are the property tax, for example, is asynchronous. It doesn't come in every month. So it throws off a simple projection. But there are revenues that come in that also offset your expenditures. It's not just the cash sitting in the, which fortunately Cupertino has a very liquid situation. The lathe you were just raising, it's a pretty high balance. It could cover unexpected elements. But so what I'm driving at is there's 2 points to this compliance statement. You could add in, as some of the other cities in our neighboring cities do, where they say taking into account the revenues from property taxes, sales taxes, other revenues that are going to come in, and the cash balances and the projected expenditures, the compliance is satisfied. And of course, the bigger cities have a lot bigger staff, so they can do these little tables of liquidity and cash projection, which maybe isn't appropriate for maybe a smaller staff like Cupertino. But to me, we could go back 5 years and see what the average 6-month rolling net expenditure was, and say over the last 5 years for 6-month periods, it was a range of a minus 2 million to a plus 4 million, or whatever the number is. And then that allows us to say, well, yeah, the liquidity is way over that. We could sell lathe or we could do whatever. So then clearly your statement is supported by information in your report. And then last question on this statement, some cities even take into account capital expenditures in the word expenditures. And I don't know what you are thinking about, but to me, expenditures probably would include capital expenditures. But what's your thinking on that? Because I guess you could still do the 5-year look back that takes 6 years rolling. But if you put capital expenditures in there, it's kind of a little bit more high. You can have big jumps at times.
Yeah, great questions. We can certainly together to have that rolling 6-month average over the course of 5 years and provide that number.
The benefit is you wouldn't have to update it every 3 months. Drawback to having those graphs that we used to have, because
So what we can probably do is set that balance. And unfortunately for the city, we've had some budget cuts, so some of those numbers might be I wouldn't say artificially, but in a sense, it's artificially decreased, right? Because we did cut back due to the CDTFA audit, some of those expenses, and as we're starting to ramp some of that, finding that new normalcy, right? That 6 months could be greater now. So, however, the city is quite liquid right now. I have no doubt that even within what's sitting in our checking plus what's sitting in LAIF, we're gonna have more than enough to cover a 6-month average. But yeah, we can certainly do something along those lines that kind of support that assertion.
I think even the generation of those graphs was because this statement makes perfect sense, but without more behind it, if you had $100 million expenditure coming up in the next 6 months, that might stress the ability to satisfy the compliance requirements. So, okay, And I'm not saying by any means we should go back to the 20-page commentary and things, but that grew over years, I think, in response to trying to satisfy some more color, which can be done in many different ways. Okay, maybe it's time. We've got a little bit of time left here. Yeah, perfect. If Carlos has something to say, we're happy to always hear from Carlos.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I apologize. When this invitation landed in my inbox on my calendar, it landed for 4 o'clock. So I'm not quite sure why that happened. That's happened in the past. So we just we'll have to connect and just to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. Secondly, I've been listening in on the conversation. So I want to make sure that I address any questions you may have. The investment portfolio was not covered the last time because I think you guys bumped me to the next time period. I'm not sure if that's what you'd like me to cover now. We did spend some time on the investment policy. I think there were some questions around the reporting and what's required from California code. I'd just like to know from this body which direction you'd like me to go and how long you'd like me to take to do that.
Sure, Carlos, sorry for the time. I think what happened is through a glitch, we didn't get this on the agenda in time for public notice. So we would have covered it with you, but we couldn't because of the Brown Act or Notification Act. So what we did was come up with a special meeting in advance of a 45-day requirement that's out there. And this meeting is just barely within that limit. We set 30 minutes for it. So we've got another 5 minutes that we can spend. I think we have had some questions. I think one question, if I can speak for Vice Mayor Moore, was in future or maybe even now, we're going to have a consolidated report from you guys that includes what we've been seeing from the city separately. That it might be nice if you could expand on what you think that's going to be like or what the purpose of that is, the benefits. And then the compliance question, if you were just listening to, I think a little bit more. Other cities do provide more color around the compliance statement. So I'm striving to get something simple but doable.
You got it. Let's answer Vice Mayor Moore's question first, which is about the reporting and the consolidated. I think it's important to note that so Chandler obviously manages a portion of the city's investments, but doesn't manage all of it. There's other amounts that are sitting in the state pool and local agency investment fund, and there's also some at the bank, which is invested in a money market mutual fund, which acts like a sweep vehicle. At night, it pulls it out of that bank account and it gets invested in short-term investments, and it gets moved back, and it has a high degree of liquidity, but it's earning some decent yields right now. So the combination of all of those plus some balances at the bank itself are the totality of your investment program. We're only but a portion of it. But we have the ability to report on all of it so long as staff provides us with the balances. We can only do that on a month-end basis, and anything that the staff passes on to us, we can report the month-end balance. In terms of the earnings, it just depends on the security. If it's LAIF, we can usually keep up with the LAIF factors and report an accrual so that you get an idea so that it flows through your earnings in our statements. But if it's at the bank, we have no access to that. We don't know what the factors are. So you just see the balance on there. How this is helpful to you, Vice Mayor, is it gives you one place where you can go and see your entire investment program. That's the value of that. It allows you as a policymaker to very quickly ascertain how much money the investment program has and where is it invested. And you'll see that broken out on a consolidated basis. There is anything that you are that staff is pushing on to us. Again, since we don't manage the entire value, it means that we rely on staff to get us those balances, and as quickly as they can get them to us after month end, the better. But we generate a monthly compliance report, and we do that on a consolidated basis, and that's not done by the investment team, which I'm a part of. It's done by our independent compliance team. So they're looking at the entire investment program, and they have a summary of your investments, and they list whether you're in compliance or not. And that's another report that you as a policymaker can very quickly go in and see whether we're in compliance or not. California code's requirements on reporting are very minimal. Very, very minimal. The only requirement that California code has is that the staff report monthly transactions. And even that is open to interpretation. Now, staff goes above and beyond that. They have their own staff report and write-up. It's a treasurer's report that they write up. And they also use our materials, which give you everything that there is under California Code 53646. But 53646, I just wanted to make sure you're aware, is optional. It's not, it's a good idea to maintain it. Policymakers have to know what they're dealing with. And 53646 does a good job of feeding you that information, but it is optional. You're not required to do it, and not all cities do this amount of reporting. Lastly, I'll say this. The returns that we generate can only be generated on the amounts that we manage. We cannot generate returns or any other additional or specific information on balances that we do not manage. But we can generate some positions. If we know what's in there, we can, if it's LAIF, we can tell you how much you have in LAIF, and then roll it up so that you can see it on a consolidated basis with everything else that you own. So that there is value to that, but it's limited, and it's only at points during the month, meaning after month end. We can't provide data during the course of the month like we do already for the assets that we do manage. Let me pause there, and maybe you have some questions.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I'm looking, thank you for that information, and I'm looking at the holdings report. And you're showing, I can tell that, like, the first part is what's at Chandler, this first account, 10659, that must be what you're managing, given what I see is in that account. And then you have a separate, and I'm going to say this is a consolidated account, 10663, because it has LAIF here, and then you have cash, a custodial cash account, and then some other ones. So I'd like to understand what this is this is a consolidation of. It's page 44 of your report, or 54 of the PDF page numbering.
So
So Vice Mayor Moore, if I may share my screen, I'm about to do that right now. So
Okay.
correct, in the holdings report, as you correctly identified, this 10659 is the main portfolio that we manage. And of course, if you go to the very end of it, that's $171.3 million, which I'm zooming in on right now. Okay, so and then another 1.1 million in accrued interest. When you include accrued interest, it's 172. And then we get to the next page that you mentioned. This is just when you see the word reporting. This is a reporting account, meaning these are the balances that staff has reported to us, meaning we don't manage it. And that's cash, custodial can't. So this is some of the monies that are invested in that money market fund sweep. And then this receivable is some dividends or accruals that haven't come to you. And then, of course, the LAIF component. That's just the reporting, meaning we don't manage this. So this is just but a segment. This is valued at $113 million. If you go beyond that section, there's a divider. Wait a minute. Let's see. I don't see it in here, but in the past, we have in the holdings themselves, we can give you a consolidated holdings that shows you everything. And if you go back up in this report, which I'm doing right now, so you'll notice that there's the information for 10659, the account that we manage. There's your returns. There's the net of fee. There's the actual return. There's the benchmark, and then the net of fee return, which is something that this committee has requested in the past. And then we go ahead, and there's the reporting on a total basis, 113 million. That includes accrued interest. There's the holdings, how much in LAIF and how much is considered cash. And then you have a consolidated section. So this is everything. The 285 that you see here, that is everything. And then the average yield, the average market yield, which refers to reinvestment, the average credit quality, the average days to maturity. So if I go forward, then you can see a breakout of where that is. So you can tell immediately that treasuries make up a quarter, LAIF makes up a little bit less than that. That's your second biggest holding there. And then you can see how it's diversified. So this includes everything. It includes the portion we manage and the portion that we do not. Now, in the holdings report where you can see it by asset level, it isn't in here, But that's something we can include, a consolidated holdings report. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that we have the LAIF and parse the actual statement. But I'm going to want to see the statements from the other accounts to have some kind of backup here. Because we don't have any check-in from seeing the statement to this report to like verify.
I understand. So, just, if Carlos can get us back to page 44, I just want to highlight something and then. So one of the reasons, we discussed earlier is that we want us, I'm probably gonna roll this back, just do the basic essentials, which does not include these cash, accounts for this, quarter. We have that report. This one was adjusted afterwards to include some of those, balances. This is where we erroneously, line 3, got cash for 164,000. That should not have been included. And I provided that in, that number to Chandler. This is that, flex benefit account that should not. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna provide this report to council, but, again, that is how it's historically been reported, which did not include these cash accounts. Starting next, quarter, we'll have that comparison. What is the late balance for the beginning of the balance, the quarter, which is your March 31st balance, as well as the June 30th balance. So you'll be able to see that change. So that's an adjustment we will be making on the next run. And so it'll clean up that balance there, and then we'll be able to consolidate this, because there is, apart from this, you can also see the change. There's other reports, I believe, in other section of this report that would misrepresent these balances. So page 30, Carlos, can you go to that page?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so what my question is would we have in the like attachments? It's great that we have the statement of transactions for where the Chandler account actually is, but what we're missing is, I think it's the custodial cash account.
That's our Wells Fargo checking account.
Yeah.
And the 16,000, that would be our workers' comp account that
Okay.
the city also owns.
So even a heavily redacted one would suffice. I'm just looking for some way to check back and go, oh, yeah, it's the same. And that, so in the case, because you're handing off information to another organization, and there is an opportunity for something to not flow. And then we have that surety that, yeah, we see this, we see that, and then it's all good.
Yeah, we can put something together, whether it's a separate statement, if you can get Wells Fargo to provide us a very rudimentary, hey, this is your balance at the end of the year, kind of supporting that number rather than a statement that's been heavily redacted.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Good. Okay, any other? We appreciate. I think you didn't comment on my particular compliance question other than saying it was voluntary, which is news to me. But a lot of cities do provide that statement, I think you're saying. To me, you may remember, we frequently ask you, how often do you do a cash flow projection with the city staff? And when you first came on board, you did a more detailed one, or your team did. And then periodically you ask staff whether there's any items that might be unusually large that you should take into account because your portfolio planning involves that.
Correct. We did do one when we initially came on board. There were a couple things. Remember that the kind of cash flow analysis that we do is a statistical analysis. So it relies on the seasonality and the repetitive nature of the revenue collection cycle and the expenditure cycle that any typical city has. When that breaks down, kind of breaks down the model, So there was a season where there was a lot of unknowns. The city had a lot of unknowns related to this tax dispute that the city had. Now that that's been solved, it may be worth revisiting. Having said that, staff always has had a pretty good handle on what they needed from a cash basis, and they communicate that. That's a discussion that we've had all along the way. To your first comment, you're looking at California Government Code 53646. In the case of a county, the treasurer may annually render a policy. In the case of a local agency, may annually render a statement of investment policy. And then here it is. The treasurer or fiscal officer may, and the key word is may, which I'm highlighting right there, may render a quarterly report to the chief executive officer, the internal auditor, and the legislative body of the local agency. If you do it, then you have to follow these precepts. That's how 53646 reads. But the key word is the word may. It's optional. The only requirement from code that you report comes directly out of 53650.3, I think it is. Hold on a second. I'll give it right there. I'll find it for you. I've got it somewhere here.
So, so
3607. The authority may be the authority to sell or exchange or buy may be delegated for a 1-year period. And then it says to a treasurer who in your case, it's usually the finance director, who shall thereafter assume full responsibility for transactions. And here it is. And shall make a monthly report of those transactions. That's the only requirement from a reporting standpoint that the law has. And the word shall is a very strict word, as you're all aware.
This is very helpful. The vice mayor has just pointed out the investment policy that the city, we just reviewed at our last meeting with you, has the word shall in the some of the compliance elements. So I guess the city's adopted a more stringent reporting requirement than we had realized the law may be imposed, or at least I personally had realized, but that is very good to know. In the context of how much more detail we want around that sentence, it's maybe city staff will come back with some more amplification or not, depending on what they determine is appropriate. Thank you very much. Any other comments from any of us? This has all been very helpful, even though we've read this for 10 years or more, and always learn something more. Anything else that we'll just proceed to accept this then, which is our Christina, Jonathan, we need a vote because this has got a 45-day, or usually when we say accept, I accept as chair.
I don't think there's actual action needed.
Perfect. Well, then we are hereby duly accepted the report. Much appreciate everybody's participation. And thanks, Carlos, for
You're
coming.
very welcome. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. So I think that was our main purpose here. There are other items on the agenda, but the committee meeting at upcoming meetings and events, there's a mayor commissioner meeting that I'm planning to go to on May 21st, but I'm still waiting for what exactly I'm going to report on. So there's a format that I guess maybe is it Serena that's helping inform that meeting?
Serena and I think Lauren may have been coordinating.
So possibly because I missed the March 19th meeting, I don't actually have something that shows whatever the current format is. I've got something from last year, so maybe you could make sure
Work together on it.
I get it. I guess it's 10 days away. I hate to, since I missed the last one, I delinquent in reporting on this one.
Yeah, maybe we can also catch up. There's we'll be going to council on the investment policy, and I believe it's what was approved last time for the May 2020. Correct? Yeah, it's that meeting. So I believe it's been council's direction to have the chair attend those meetings where it's something that's sent from the committee or from the commission to them for.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this. So what exactly is it that when we do something that's a vote? Sometimes we just do it. we used to vote on a lot more things in the past, and now I'm still a little confused. So we do forward many things to the city council, but we don't always.
I believe if it's an action item such as the policy, that it's the desire of the city council to have the chair in attendance. Questions are raised.
Ah, okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, so I will put, what day, now this is important, May 20th is when it's scheduled, and if city staff could help us remember which ones are actually subject to these attendance issues, that would be very helpful, so we wouldn't want to inadvertently not attend, which I would not have done if you hadn't just brought it up. So thank you. Okay, anything else? Let's see, we're done. There's no public staff. We are,
Sir, did you want to add something?
please, yeah.
A new future agenda setting item here.
Yeah, sure.
Are we on that?
If we have one, let's cover it.
I'm not sure. So, when I was looking at the investment policy about the 45 days, there was a reference to 53607, and this was something I'd kind of dropped the ball on. And I think the investment policy probably should have addressed this language a little more clearly. But it's the delegation of investment, the authority. That the policy sort of says it, but it doesn't just like really pin it down. That it says, subject to review, the legislative body may renew the delegation of authority pursuant to this section each year. And then in the past, the council would renew it by resolution. And that the investment policy sort of mentions it, but not super clearly. So I don't know, because this is already passed through the audit committee. It's on its way to the council. I don't know how to.
If we can certainly revisit it, unless we were to have another special meeting before it goes to council, because the current investment policy is set to expire June 30th. So we would have another special meeting, audit committee meeting in order to discuss this. We can push this through, and then if you want to have a further discussion or include in a future agenda, to have that discussion, we can certainly do so.
I want to say, I think we strengthened the language. Policy is passed via resolution by council, and in the reso, I believe the city attorney kind of strengthened up the language. I remember there was either in the policy or within the reso where it was kind of more solidified. We can try to.
Yeah, we can look for the resolution, but I do remember last year there was some language change. Good point. I can look into it and I can get back to you on that.
So in terms of maybe when we have more information, we can figure out whether we put it on a future agenda. Perfect. I wasn't aware of those resolution, niceties. We gotta be careful. So, very good. Okay. Any other future agenda item? No, I think we're set. All right, we are now adjourned. Thanks, everybody.